Hello, I am Brother Kelly Hughes, Chaplain of the Arts. I am taping here my first remote interview. Very excited. This is Kelly Hughes Live Slices. Thank you for joining us on YouTube or 101.5 UMFM every Saturday at 1 p.m. So thank you so much for joining us. And I would like to thank my first remote guest, who I'm sure is not a remote person, Barbara Findlay, who is a lawyer, an LGBT activist. What else would you like to add to your?
Oh, that works.
That's good. An OG. You're an OG, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm before we start, I'm going to give like a sort of a content warning here, which I don't normally do, but we're going to be talking about some stuff that's going to be upsetting for people, I think, but I think it's important uh, to have the discussion because we're going to talk about things that are happening in the world, and um, we can't really talk about that, without kind of talking about the whole thing. So I wanted to have you on, Barbara, because so this whole Rape Academy thing, which was, I don't, it feels like it's kind of moved out of the news cycle. Does that seem fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
But it, was, I don't know what that was, a month ago or whatever, came out on, on CNN. And I noticed that you were, posting about it, and talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
on social media. Can you just, tell everybody, just kind of the Coles Notes version of what it is, in case people have been living under a rock?
The Rape Academy is the name of a website that exists for the purpose of teaching men how to drug the women that they're sleeping with and then assault them. And it has 62 million views.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, this is not just a kind of neighborhood, small neighbor problem.
So when you saw that report, uh, I mean, were you surprised? Not surprised? Like, what was your feeling when you read that, when you saw that report?
I was horrified. I was horrified because although we are all familiar with the Epstein files and the idea that the billionaire class use women the way they use everything else,
Mm,
um, it the Rape Academy took means that every woman who goes to bed with a man cannot know whether that man has been to the Rape Academy. There is no
yeah.
way to know that. So there is no way to know whether you're going to have been drugged and raped in the night. And that degree of universality, I guess,
Yeah.
that this is not something that is unusual or
Hmm.
abnormal or and it exists precisely to drug and harm your partner.
Hmm.
So that means that sexual assault, we tend culturally to think about sexual assault as stranger danger.
Yeah.
Women are mostly at risk from men they don't know. That's not actually true,
Yeah.
never has been, but this has brought it home in a different way than anything else I've seen. And then when I say brought it home, that's literally what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. And it, like you say, it's not anything new, but all of a sudden, I mean, because one of the great things about the internet is people having access to information. So it's great if you have access to good information, if you have access to help, but it can also be a breeding grounds for something like this, where all of a sudden all these uh, bad actors, these men with bad intent, now have access uh, to this, very specific information on how to do certain things and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
What really kind of got me, I mean, obviously the story is awful, but what got me almost as much as that was the response from men generally. And when I say that, I mean like just absolute fucking crickets, like
Yeah.
nothing. And you were on social media after this, and you were kind of uh, offering to talk to men and to kind of help sort of work some of these things through and whatever. But I have some theories. But why is it that you think that men just like aren't talking about this? They don't want to talk about this. They won't talk about it. What's your take on that?
Well, that was actually the other half of my horror because um, I don't, first of all, I don't understand why men have not been speaking, since it would be dead easy to say something along the lines of, really, really, really sorry to learn about this,
Yeah,
um, redoubling my efforts to support the women in my life.
yeah,
Easy peasy.
yeah,
And nobody was doing that. And I mean, I even after I posted things that said, if you do not say something, you are complicit
yeah,
with it. And that didn't move men to post. Recently, like in the last couple of days, there have been a couple of posts from
yeah.
men. But honestly, you would be more qualified than I to speculate about why, because I really and
Yeah.
truly, this is a complete mystery to me.
Yeah, I have a couple of theories, ranging from kind of the sort of the most innocent one, which is just uh, wow, hey, I can't believe that something like this even exists. This must be some crazy aberration. This is wow, what is this? I don't know what to say about it. Ranging from that to I've done things that I know would get me in trouble, and I don't want them coming from me. So I better not say anything about, you know what I mean? It's like the kid in class who is sitting at the back trying not to put his hand up. I mean, that is that is kind of one of my theories too. And I guess every and then also the other thing is just you know we we live, the patriarchy is still real, and we still have our privilege, and maybe we just don't care. I mean, that's
and
actually,
and and as a class, that saying nothing is going to attract no consequences.
yeah.
Zero.
Sorry.
I mean, you're just not. Nobody's going to think less of you. Nobody's going to um, you know freeze you out at the next party you're at. Nobody's going to, none of that. You can say nothing. And
Um, there's kind of an interesting piece that I've been thinking about in the last couple of days. I've never had kids, so I don't really think a lot about raising kids. But I was watching. There's an African American fella down in the States who does this after school program, and he has all these young boys, young black boys, and they teach them all kinds of different things that maybe they're not really familiar with, how to go grocery shopping, what to do in a hotel, or all these things. But one of them was about consent, which I thought was very, very interesting, and he was teaching it to them in an age appropriate way, but it was very obvious. And he was saying to them, like, even if somebody says even if somebody reluctantly says yes, if their body language says that they don't, a woman specifically says she doesn't want to give you a hug or whatever, then that's a no. and
Mhm.
he seemed to get all these boys to understand that. And I was thinking that like we must just be socializing our boys and our young men wrong. I mean,
Yes.
why like this? If we were doing that right, this wouldn't be going on. And I read something also just in the last couple of days. Mary Pfeiffer, who said that we should uh, that rape should be like cannibalism. Like we should, we should socialize people, and especially men and boys, to understand that rape is like cannibalism. Like it should be that level of taboo. I mean, nobody thinks cannibalism is good
Hmm.
unless you crash into the Andes and you've got no food, right? Um, so that was an interesting thing, because there is a thing which has very successfully been taboo. That's not, cannibalism is not really a taboo that's challenged by anyone. We kind of all agree on that. Um, so that was interesting. But I mean, like, do you think we're just uh, are we letting our boys and our young men down?
Well, it's not. It's worse than we're not. We are training them that they are entitled,
Yeah,
and the reason I say that is because as boys are growing up, teasing of 7, 9, 10 year olds. So you have a girlfriend yet? What are you going to do with your girlfriend? Have you asked out somebody? So they grow up in a paradigm in
yeah,
which boys and men have legitimated power. They're the ones who do the asking. They're the ones who they're trained that they're supposed to look out for, but they're also brought up in the paradigms of the culture, which is boys are boys' sexuality is not something easily contained or appropriately contained.
yeah,
So, like, you just watch the movies, watch
yeah.
what's on TV. If you take that for what it is, which is the lessons in how to be male,
Mhm,
how to be a man in this culture,
mhm,
it's like, really, is that the
yeah.
best we can do?
How much of that is wrapped up in heteronormativity, do you think?
Well, I think,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know that it matters
yeah,
exactly. Men, men like power,
yeah,
and they like power over. Straight men have power over women, and they take power over gay men
yeah,
when they can.
yeah,
And that's what I would say about it.
yeah. So, I mean, is it something in our DNA, or is it just structural, or like what?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't.
Yeah,
I, 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 as a social scientist, I would look at cultures where rape is not an active phenomenon.
okay.
And I did do that about 50 years ago. I was doing a presentation for the International Bar Association, and I researched, and I could find no cultures in which rape did not exist in some
Mm,
form or another.
yeah,
Now, that's very old research,
yeah,
but um, so whether it's in some sense innate or not, its expression is certainly socially, like, the social context really matters. Whether it's seen as something, as you say, something would be treated like cannibalism
yeah,
as so over the top, or whether it's treated as, oh yeah, boys will be boys, that makes a huge difference. And in our culture, we are much more on the boys will be boys end of things in terms of consequences for sexual assault. Sexual assault is reported at a rate of about 6% or some incredibly
Yeah.
low figure because women know perfectly
Yeah.
well that they're not going to be benefited by making a complaint about having been sexually assaulted.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm, you know, I'm a middle-aged white cis man who's moved through the world in a different way than you or my partner or other people or whatever. But I mean, even I know that like you talk to like you have a room full of women and non-binary folks and whatever. Like every single one is going to have a story. I mean, forget six
Yeah,
percent; it's 100%. Like I know
yeah,
that,
I,
and I haven't even had to live that, but I know that. So, um, this uh, but uh, I guess it's like um, it's like Viagra. I mean, look at all the men have a problem with something, and they put all this money and all this resources into it, and you have all these women's problems and nobody cares. uh and I think it's the same with this. Like this feels uh to people, to men, it feels to them like a women's problem, and of course it's not. I mean, this is a man problem. And that's why, like, I mean, I spoke up about it almost right away. But my honestly, like, the people that responded, like, to the things that I did post, I did a video and some other things. I posting about it on social media, and the likes and the responses and whatever. Honestly, it was about 15% men. Like the responses, people that were just even liking it was so low. The men, yeah, men. And
even
but
to
I feel
you.
like
Yeah.
uh, as a person that looks like I do and that moves through the world looking like this, I need to talk about it. I mean, I need to talk about it because um, maybe they're not going to
Mm.
listen to me, but like uh, there's lots of people that are not going to listen to a woman at all. So maybe I won't have any luck. But like you
Yeah.
say, I mean, uh, it's not any, it's not difficult. I don't need to spend a bunch of capital, my life's capital, to talk about it. Like you said, like there's a bare minimum. There's a bare minimum that that
Yeah.
you rightly say that men uh, could be doing, and I mean they were just all hiding under a rock. Um, so
Margaret Atwood had a great line about it. She says, "Men are afraid of women. They're afraid women will laugh at them. Women are afraid of men.
yeah,
They're afraid the men will kill them." And that kind of, to me, that
yeah.
captures something
And you remember
in what
that thing
you
that
were
was going
saying
around a
about,
couple of years ago about women, choosing the bear, that thing, and lots of people
hmm
made fun of that. I mean, there were lots of jokes. Men were making lots of jokes about that. Um,
that was the meme. That was the meme where the question women were asked was
yeah,
whether they would
and they,
choose to be alone with a bear or with a band. And the
yeah,
answer
and so there
the
was a lot
most
of
women chose to be alone with the bear.
there were a lot of jokes about that, and there was a lot of criticism of that, and there was a lot of mockery and whatever. But I mean, it makes perfect sense, to me. I understand that. I understand why that is um, the case, and like interestingly, like
Yeah,
if I was a if I was a Muslim and if there were terrorist attacks, done by Muslims, I would be expected to denounce those things. Um, Yet I'm not expected to denounce the things that men do all the time. I get to just sit here and, like you say, there's no consequences
yeah.
for me. So like, what I mean, is there any kind of answer? Like, is there any like what do we do? Like, how do we try to move ourselves in the right direction?
Well, I think that I don't mean to be trite. I think what you're doing right now is the essential piece, which is we have to start talking about it as a problem
Yeah.
as opposed to accepting it as a norm. And and that means in particular men and men's representatives need to be doing that. Women are just never, no matter if we have 100% of the women, we don't have the political power on this issue to move it forward. So it's going to fall on men, and it's going to
Yeah.
fall on men calling on and calling out other men. Like it, that means that a guy asked me one time. He said, was my boss. He said to me, "Do you think I'm a feminist?" I said, "I don't know, Jack. If you're alone and there are no women in the room, and somebody makes a blonde joke, do you laugh?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, you're not a feminist." In other words,
Yeah.
men need to be talking, like, take responsibility for talking among their groups of men, among raising it. Like, how many
Yeah.
men do you know who've actually brought up the topic in a
No, I mean,
conversation since it happened?
I've been
I
talking
bet
about
not
it,
very
but and
many.
even
Eh?
uh some of the things that I've
You
seen,
you
like
have,
not necessarily towards me, but I've seen women posting about it, and then men coming on and kind of, saying, "Oh, we can't have this. You can't talk like this. We need to. This is just going to create more division. We need to, sort of. I don't know if that's tone policing, but just kind of like, hey, just cool it. Or like not all men, but and I've said to guys like, if this isn't about you,
yeah,
then you don't have to worry that it's about you. We're not talking about you. If it's not you, it's not you. So, um, I mean, and it is interesting. I mean, the Epstein files, which you brought up, is interesting because
yeah,
there are so many men who, and of course the Republican Party in the U.S. Uh, seem to be all about going after pedophiles. I mean, that was the thing they were talking about for forever, but it was just a weird. I mean, there's a bunch of them right in their midst, and there's not a single person. I mean, uh, even like even the royal family
uh-huh,
booted out formerly Prince Andrew. I mean, the
yeah,
royal family, who you would vote them least likely to do anything about somebody who was a problem,
uh-huh,
and none of these people, uh, nobody's been had any charges laid on them for any of the things in the Epstein files, which is crazy. But it just shows that all this stuff about we're to protect children, we're going to protect women or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
it's posturing, and it's lies. It's not. I mean, it couldn't be further.
It's bullshit. Yeah, yeah. Really, when you step back and you think about what you're saying, which is you step back and you think there has been an expose of the
Yeah,
white male elite involved in child sexual activity
yeah,
documented in the public realm, and nobody is accountable for any of it.
yeah,
Like, isn't that
yeah.
just the only person
Um,
who's been charged and
and
convicted
and
apart
like you
from
say, it's
Epstein
not a new
is a
it's
woman?
not a new thing. Um, um, I know people in our community. I have somebody who I grew up with who went to jail uh for uh sexual misconduct with a girl. And in his case, he lost his job and his career and whatever. But I mean, that's kind of the, I feel like that's the exception. I mean, there are so many uh, men out there who never, part of it I think has to do with money. I mean, if you have enough money, as you know, as a lawyer, if you have enough money and you can hire good lawyers, um, you can, you know, you can kind of escape whatever's coming to you forever. Um, this is just sort of an aside, but I heard an interesting thing yesterday. Out of the
Yeah.
out of all the January Sixers that Trump pardoned, um, about 35 of them have been reconvicted of other things, and in the last 2 months, like um, I think three of them in the last 2 months were men, were child pornography stuff, and all that kind of stuff, and um, those men that were pardoned, and one of them actually, his lawyer
Yeah.
tried to get this other charge rolled in with the January 6th pardon. Even though it was completely unrelated, and I mean, like, even worse. I don't think that they were successful with that, um, but yeah. So it's just everywhere, and it just happens
Yeah.
all the time. And like you said, you went back 50 years ago. You were looking to find a place where it wasn't happening, and you couldn't. Um, but now with the internet, we just have so much access to things that we shouldn't. And then also there's these kind of communities of like-minded people who are uh, people who are
Yeah.
not well. People who uh, uh, the talk about the male loneliness epidemic and the incels and these people finding each other, and think about all the young men who were in high school during COVID, who kind of lost 2 or 3 years of proper socialization. Uh, I It's depressing, really. I'm losing you again
Mhm.
there. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. I
What
mean,
do
I
you
do
think?
think.
What do you think needs to happen
I you know
for
I
that those lost young men?
I'm a little bit torn because I'm kind of uh I was talking to my therapist about this the other day, and I told her, like I said, I don't really uh I'm fine with myself, and I'm fine with my body and being in the body I'm in and whatever, but I don't really like being part of man culture, you know? There's so much about it that I don't like. So I understand why people just kind of want to check out and not participate, whether that's, not participating in being a man or not participating in being a woman. People that just say, I don't like any of this. I'm done. I'm out. But I do think, like I mentioned, that guy who was doing that work with those boys, that were probably 10, and they were still, I guess, young and impressionable. But he seemed to be doing such a good job teaching them, really. A lot of them, like I said, most of the things were practical, but I was just so impressed with this, with him teaching them consent in such an age appropriate way. So that really, like, I think that I think that I guess that we need better role models. I mean, you look at, um, we're living in an age. I mean, you certainly are.
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with the term
Mm-hmm.
virtue signaling. We live in an age where vice signaling is a thing. Where we've got um, politicians and people in the manosphere and podcasters and all these people who just say and do awful things unapologetically, and it's just out there, and it's fine, and nobody says that's bad, and nobody says you can't or shouldn't do that. It's just out there, and I guess uh yeah, I guess there need to be more people talking about better things, I guess. Uh, but it does seem like, you know, the somebody like me, like I have so much privilege, and I can just uh, if I didn't do this, if I wasn't doing this, like whatever, you know, I could move on with my life. I could, you know, obviously not me personally, not with my conscience, but I just mean I can just walk through the world and do whatever I want. I can walk down the middle of the sidewalk and everybody else will move because I'm a big white cis dude.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of feel like, I
Yeah.
guess I feel like uh, we
Yeah.
need to find ways
Yeah.
to show people that to show men that
Yeah.
they will be happy relationships with women. I think that we need to show men that if we lift women up, and it's not gonna, you're not gonna lose your place in society. You know what I mean? I can, yeah, yeah, and I'm not gonna. The women aren't, you know. I mean, I'd be probably fine if women took over, but I mean, I don't need to worry that like you know, if I help kind of, you know, lift women and non-binary folks up, then I'm somehow going to be
You're not going to be
out of a
emasculated
job
if you have
or,
an equal
you know,
part.
not able to participate or whatever. Um, uh, you know, actually, I think that we really, I think that I don't think that we teach our boys empathy uh, in the way that we should. I think that's a huge missing piece because I think if you really had empathy, and I mean, just a naturally empathetic person. So I mean, I hear about stuff like this, and I'm just like, oh my god.
I think you're right.
Um, and then other men hear about it, and they want to
Yeah.
argue about the numbers. They want to say, well, 62 million means, and so I do. Yeah, I feel like, you know, whether it's you know, in our chromosomes or what, I really do think that that we need to spend more time teaching our boys and young men empathy because I think that would like that would go such a long way. Uh, yeah, and I don't know. Um, yeah, again, I don't know anything about raising kids or anything like that. I imagine that it's easier to do that when you're younger. You know, I certainly have been on
Mm-hmm.
a my whole adult life. I've been on a journey uh, of learning a lot of things and unlearning a lot of things. And I grew up in a very uh, conservative, evangelical, Christian kind of an environment. You know, which is even like even worse. You know, than a lot of than just sort of the general society stuff. I remember I took my partner when we just got together. I took them to a wedding uh, in my family. So you know, a evangelical wedding, and the pastor said weaker vessel, and my partner just looked at me and was like, "What? What did he just say?" Because my partner grew up as an atheist and you know really had which is unusual especially for Manitoba. Lots of people grow up in various churches and have to find their way out. um, but yeah, so I mean there it's even worse, and I have been sort of unlearning that for a long time, but like I mean I always had this kind of empathy within me, so that was kind of a natural way that I was leaning. And I think I know a lot of men that are like, I just know a lot of hard men, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
no, I kind of think probably in spite of the way that I was raised. I mean, I think it's just the way that
So, what do you
feel like
think?
it's the way that I'm
How do you
wired.
think it is
You
the
know,
case
as
that
a
you
sort of a
grew up,
neurodivergent
developed with
person and a
empathy?
person who kind of thinks in a different,
Can you
uh,
pull up something
thinks
in
in a
your
different
background that
way.
would?
Because I really didn't. I a lot of things about the way I grew up were problematic. I do
Mhm,
I do credit my partner. We've been together for about 15 years, with helping me. They're the kind of
mhm,
person who always pushing me, always asking me questions. Very annoying sometimes, um, and then I've had to think about it, you know, and well, why did you say that thing? That's why would you say something like that? Oh, well, and it takes years. And also I think I've been I want to grow, and
mhm,
I think for a lot of people as they age, it's very difficult for people to change. It's very difficult for people to grow. People kind of get set in their ways, and they just don't want to. But I guess I realized, I guess I saw
mhm.
that if I unlearned some of these things, and if I started to think in a little bit of a different way, I would probably be happier. Because I think a lot of these people that are stuck in these kind of modalities, I think they're probably pretty unhappy. Uh, so, just despite being able to move through the world and do whatever you want. Um, I want to talk about. You have a little. I want to ask you about a couple of things. You have an interesting uh, bit in your life, in the '60s when you came out. Uh,
Yeah,
can you tell us that
yeah.
story about what happened to you? Yeah,
Um, well,
yeah,
I like many other women, what they did to lesbians in those days was treated as a mental illness, and
yes,
so I ended up in
yeah,
mental hospitals because according to them
yeah,
I had a mental illness, and um,
yeah,
the
yeah.
the
When do you feel like
there's a book called the Diagnostic and Statistical
when do you feel
Manual,
like
which is like a
you were able to
psychiatrist's
start
Bible,
living as yourself and
and
start?
it
Do you remember kind of a time
until
when you kind of
1973
when you felt
homosexuality
like you could
was
kind of be
by
yourself?
definition a mental illness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, in one way, I was always myself. Um, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I
mm-hmm,
escaped the guilt. I don't know why,
mm,
but I never had any guilt. Um, and so that's
yeah,
one answer. Nevertheless, I was careful about who knew I was a
yeah,
lesbian, so I wasn't out. I called
yeah,
it the glass closet. So folks who had even had ever met a queer before would recognize me across a crowded room.
yeah,
But straight folks just didn't
yeah,
have that in their perceptual frames at all. It just went completely unremarked. Another answer is that I made a very deliberate choice in 1992 to open my own law practice and to describe myself as a lesbian lawyer, which nobody had ever done before in Canada. And so that made me very
yeah,
much like front and center in terms of my identity. And I did that on purpose
yeah,
because the
Yeah,
we
and
needed to have
there's
our
lots now.
equality rights litigated and
My
respected. That was the first
my
thing.
niece
But
Liza
the
is a
other
queer
thing was
lawyer
that
who
there
you I
was
know
no
you work
such thing
with
as a
sometimes
visible queer
out there.
legal
And
anything. So
one thing that I find very
so
encouraging
I did
is
that.
that young people, like I'm 56, and I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
younger people have a different idea about
Hmm.
sexuality. They're more uh, easygoing and open minded about it. It's not so cut and dried, which I think is great. What a wonderful thing. Um, and I think another thing that you've done a lot of is you've done a lot of activism for trans folks. Um, what do you think about? Let's talk about the
Yeah, me too.
turfs. Like, what is
Yeah.
wrong with J.K. Rowling? That's what I want to know. Like, why, why has she just decided to spend the whole rest of her uh, capital in the world, on this one, on sort of terrorizing people? Like, what? Why? Mm,
Well, I'm going to answer that question in this way. They're wrong. They're mistaken. I have also been mistaken in ways which are
mm,
bigoted. And the story I will tell you is when, like, in the about maybe the early 80s,
right.
the burning question of the hour was whether or
Yeah.
not bisexual women should be permitted, and that was the language we used, in lesbian only spaces, or did they pose a risk because they would go home and sleep with men and tell them everything we'd said? I was on the wrong side of that question. And I mean, I came around pretty quickly, relatively speaking. But I don't. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's useful to
Yeah.
to live in a world where I'm right and the other person is wrong, kind of by definition. I don't think that's helpful. I think it's more helpful to understand that we probably all
Mm,
in various ways at various times have
yeah.
been in an analogous place in our
Yeah.
lives, and that
Yeah.
there's, for example, when I look at the Minneapolis demonstrations and the signs and the chants there are, "You are free to change your mind." And they go stand outside the ICE buildings and say to them, "Come on out, the weather's fine. You're free to change your mind." Well, so what motivates J.K. Rowling? J.K. Rowling, in particular, I can't speak to. I don't. But turfs. I, I I understand turfs to
Yeah.
be um, genuine in their misconception that trans women pose some sort of
Yeah.
risk in the way that bisexual women posed a risk to lesbian only spaces.
Yeah.
That is to say, and I've thought a lot about this
This is
process.
one of the great
When
things about
you're
the
a
internet
marginalized group,
is
the first
finding
thing you
people
have
like
to do
you.
is find
Yeah.
other people like you. This is not necessarily easy because, for example, when I was a baby dyke, it took some doing to find other baby dykes. Never mind make a connection or make any political activism with them. So, yeah, that's for sure.
Mm,
That's right. But in creating an identity,
right.
for example, creating an
Yeah.
identity as a lesbian meant
Yeah.
having enough other folks in a similar
Yeah.
situation and making a claim on that name and figuring out where we fit in the women's
Yeah.
movement, all of those things. So one of the first things you have to do in a marginalized identity is figure out who's in and who's out, who is and who isn't, who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. these answers are not given to you in advance.
Mm.
And figuring out where
Yeah.
those boundaries are means there is
Yeah.
inevitably um, ambiguity at the edges. For example, mixed race people
Yeah.
in groups for people of
Yeah.
color. I mean, in every category of oppression, there is that difficulty, that who's in and who's out. So I believe that TERFs, on the whole, are genuine in their misconception that
Right.
trans women pose a danger,
Right.
and that they
Yeah.
share with some of the
Mm.
white men who feel victimized.
I yeah.
They're
I
coming
no.
from a
I
place of
appreciate you
privilege,
saying
which feels like a place of
that
marginalized.
people
Feels to them
can and do
like a
change
place
their
of
minds, which is
marginalization,
a correct and
and
nuanced way to look at that.
that's a
It
really tricky one.
just what you said about you said something that made me think of my dad.
Uh,
Uh,
to speak into.
uh, my
Sorry,
dad
go ahead.
practiced law for over 50 years, and he was a QC. He didn't last long enough to be a KC like you, but he used to always kind of uh, bicker with his wife, and she would say they would have all kinds of disagreements, and she would say, why do you always want to be right? And he would say, I don't want to be right. I just want you to be right. Um, which was kind of his little way of saying that he was correcting her for her own good. Um, but yeah, I mean, of course, well, he was, yeah, I mean, that was, uh, yeah, that was definitely different times. And I mean, that was the other thing about, my dad was born in 1928. So, my, he
No,
called his
no
parents mother and
paternalism in that
father,
statement.
like just different, the times are so different. A lot of my friends growing up, their parents were kind of more boomers, who had a little bit of a different kind of uh, a vibe going on. But uh, yeah, so I mean, how do you how do you what do you do when you're talking to somebody about trans rights, somebody who disagrees
Hmm.
with you? What's your approach if you're trying to get them to sort of see what you're talking about? Mm.
Well, maybe a story will help. I This is not about trans stuff. It's about queer stuff. I was on an open line, a call-in show on CBC one time, probably 30 years ago now, 25 maybe. And
Yeah,
somebody called in from the north of BC to say that she was morally opposed
yeah,
to homosexuality, that homosexuals uh, caused caused harm and were a threat. And my response was, I
yeah.
can see that it really matters to you what's right and what's wrong,
Wow.
and that I actually share that um, as an area of interest. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
And I don't
that's
remember.
wonderful.
Then we had a conversation back and forth, and at the end of which she said, "I've changed my mind. I I I don't think that
Yeah,
uh, gay and lesbian people are as bad as I thought they were." So um, it actually it is a wonderful story because it is the power of
so you're
listening to
saying that
people
starting from a place of
and
I'm right
finding
and you're
in
wrong is
them
not that useful.
the part you can relate to. And generally, there's some part that it's generally possible. to find something to connect about, in my experience.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that useful
Yeah.
in conversations for sure.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I mean,
What
I go
is
to
the
court about those guys,
what do you think
and
is the
I'm
biggest
certainly not having
threat right
any
now for the
understanding
trans community?
conversations. I'm having throwing everything I've got at them and, and ensuring that we prevail, and we do
Yeah.
because they are mistaken. The the wave of transphobia that's sloshing over into Canada from the United States and causing governments to take away their charter based rights by using the notwithstanding clause. And that's the way that under the charter, which is part of the
Yeah.
country's constitution, we have a right to equality. But there's another section that says, however,
Yeah.
a government can cancel that right
Mm.
if they just put a phrase in the law itself that says, this law operates notwithstanding the Charter of Rights. And that has been something which the norm has been nobody will ever do that. No government. And for 40 years, almost nobody did.
Yeah.
But suddenly, first Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, then Danielle Smith in Alberta, have enacted explicitly transphobic laws and said this law operates to cancel the equality
Well,
rights of trans people.
well, that's depressing.
Entirely.
uh,
And
I mean, so
once that becomes a
what do you
norm,
do? You
once you
just
can
keep
do that
fighting
to
the
one
good
group,
fight, and
no other group is safe.
you keep taking them
And
on, and
my
you keep
prediction
throwing
is that within a
everything that you
generation, none
can
of
at
us will
them,
have
and
equality rights anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, and the fact of the matter is, we're
Yeah.
winning. Like in Canada,
Um, what do
the
you
folks who support trans people are
as I mentioned, you I know
vastly
you
greater numbers
do
and
some stuff with my
vastly
niece Liza,
more
who's also a
influence
lawyer.
than the people who don't.
I'm sure that you've
So
worked with lots of young up and coming
that's crucial.
queer lawyers
You know,
as a mentor. What what are folks like that doing that is very encouraging from your perspective? What do you see that you like? Because you've got different kind of energy than uh, yeah.
than the old ones, that's for sure. Well, Liza's doing amazing things at BC Civil Liberties Association, and folks are working really hard to work across communities to have advocacy in the courts, which is also connected
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
advocacy in the community.
Well, that's
And
great.
that's
I
an
wanted to kind
approach to
of
litigation
leave it a
that
little bit
certainly that
positive
Liza
because we've been
has,
kind of
and that
depressing here.
I think is
But I
a
really
really
do.
different idea
I
about how to
appreciate.
move social change forward than
Yeah.
I know better than you do what's good for you kind of litigation.
Mm,
Well, I think, and let me help you there. Every
mm,
metric, on every survey, every time they ask, Canadians emerge as a people who do respect equality and difference and honor difference. We have multiculturalism and equality in our veins. And while it is
yeah.
under serious threat, it is also true that we have the floor, and that if we are
That's
paying
wonderful.
attention,
Excellent.
we
Thank you
will
so much
prevail.
for your time, Barbara, and for
So,
talking about all these things.
I mean, it's way
This has
different
been
than if
fun,
that
and I
reverse was
appreciate
true.
you
So we
muddling
have
through all the
right on our
technical
side, and we also
difficulties
have
that we
right on
were
our side.
having.
So we're walking the road.
Thank you so. Thank you, and thank you all for tuning in. This is Kelly
Thank you
Hughes
for
Live
having me.
Slices. We'll talk to you next week.